There's a silent behavior that makes certain men absolutely impossible to ignore, and most guys will never understand it because they're too busy doing the exact opposite. Right now, while you're watching this, there are men who have women actively pursuing them, texting first, making plans, wondering what they're doing. And these men aren't doing anything special on the surface. They're not the richest, not the best looking, not the most charming in the room. But they possess something that triggers a psychological response so deep that women can't help but chase. And here's the truth that's going to shift everything you think you know about attraction. Women don't chase the men who try to win them over. They chase the men they can't figure out. This isn't about playing games. It's about understanding the invisible architecture of human desire and how power in attraction doesn't come from what you do, it comes from how you position yourself. Most men operate on a flawed strategy. They believe that showing more interest, giving more attention, being more available will make them more attractive. But this creates the opposite effect. What we're going to break down today isn't some surface-level seduction tactic. This is psychological architecture. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why the man who chases loses and the man who stands still becomes irresistible. If you want to stop being the option and start being the priority, stay with me because this changes everything.
Let's start with the fundamental error almost every man makes: predictability. When a woman can predict your behavior, when she knows you'll always respond, always be available, always react the same way, she loses interest, not because she's cruel or manipulative, but because the human brain is wired to seek what it doesn't fully understand. Predictability creates safety, and safety is important for relationships, but it doesn't create desire. Desire comes from curiosity, from the emotional unknown, from the space between what she knows and what she wants to know. When you're predictable, you become categorized. You're filed away in her mind as understood, solved, no longer a mystery. And once you're no longer a mystery, you're no longer pursued. The men who get chased are the ones who remain slightly out of reach psychologically, not because they're playing games, but because they genuinely have depth that can't be read in a single conversation. They have layers, they have lives, they have priorities that exist beyond female attention. This is what separates you from every other guy messaging her at 2 in the morning. You're not trying to win her, you're simply existing in a way that makes her want to understand you. The next critical mistake is presence in excess. Most men think that being constantly available makes them valuable, but the opposite is true. When you're always there, always responding immediately, always free when she asks, you communicate something very specific to her subconscious. You have nothing else going on. No mission, no purpose, no life that demands your attention. And this doesn't just lower your value, it eliminates tension. Tension is the space where attraction lives. Without it, there's no electricity, no pull, no reason for her to wonder about you. This doesn't mean you become a ghost or play the childish game of waiting 3 days to text back. That's transparent and weak. What it means is that your availability is a natural byproduct of a full life. You respond when you have time because you genuinely have things that matter. You're not sitting around waiting for her notification. You're building, working, improving, living. And when you do show up, it matters. Your presence has weight because it's rare. This is the principle applied to attraction. Abundance reduces value, scarcity increases it. But it has to be real scarcity, not manufactured absence. Women can smell fake disinterest from miles away. The key is to actually be busy becoming the kind of man worth chasing. Here's where it gets interesting. When you show up with impact and disappear with purpose, something psychological happens in her mind. The space you leave behind doesn't stay empty. She fills it with thoughts, with questions, with imagination. She starts to construct a narrative about who you are, what you're doing, why you're different. And that narrative, the one she creates in her own mind, is far more powerful than anything you could tell her. This is why silence has weight, not cold, bitter silence, but the quiet that comes from having a life that doesn't revolve around her validation. She begins to notice the difference between you and every other man in her orbit. Other men are always there, always trying, always seeking her approval. But you exist on your own terms. You show warmth when you're present, then you disappear back into your world without explanation or apology. This creates a loop in her psychology. She enjoyed your presence, now she wonders when she'll experience it again. And that wondering, that anticipation, that's the seed of pursuit.
Now let's talk about something most men completely misunderstand: female tests. When a woman is genuinely interested in a man she considers high value, she will test him. Not because she's evil, but because she needs to know if you're real. These tests come in many forms. She might cancel plans to see if you'll react emotionally. She might mention another guy to see if you get jealous. She might go silent to see if you'll panic and chase. And here's what separates the men who get chased from the men who get left behind: composure. When you react emotionally to her tests, when you get angry, jealous, needy, or start over-explaining yourself, you fail. You reveal that she has power over your emotional state. But when you remain calm, unbothered, and simply continue living your life, you pass. You communicate something essential: I'm not shaken by your games because my value doesn't depend on your validation. This is magnetic. Most women spend their entire lives around men who crumble under the slightest emotional pressure. When they encounter a man who doesn't, it triggers something primal: respect. And respect in a woman's mind is the foundation of attraction. She can't chase a man she doesn't respect, and she can't respect a man she can easily manipulate. Let's go deeper into the concept of mystery, because this is where most men lose the game without even realizing it. Mystery isn't about being distant or cold. It's about depth. It's about having parts of yourself that aren't immediately visible. Most men, the moment they feel a woman is interested, they open up completely. They tell her everything: their past, their feelings, their intentions, their insecurities. They think vulnerability creates connection, and it does, but only when it's earned. When you reveal everything too soon, you remove the journey. There's nothing left to discover, no reason for her to invest time trying to understand you. The men who were pursued understand that they are a book with chapters, not a pamphlet. They reveal themselves slowly, in layers. Each conversation gives her a little more, but never everything. She gets glimpses of depth, intelligence, emotion, strength, but she never gets the full picture immediately. This does something powerful. It creates emotional investment. The more time and energy she spends trying to figure you out, the more valuable you become in her mind. This is basic psychology. We value what we work for. When you make yourself too easy to understand, you make yourself easy to dismiss. Here's the trait that separates boys from men in the game of attraction: emotional indomitability. This doesn't mean you're cold or emotionless. It means you cannot be shaken. When a beautiful woman walks into the room, you notice, but you don't stare like a starving man.
When she teases you, you smile, but you don't scramble to prove yourself. When she pulls back, you don't panic and chase. You remain on your axis. Most men collapse under the weight of female beauty and attention. They become reactive, eager, transparent. But the man who remains unmoved, who treats beauty as pleasant but not paralyzing, who engages without desperation, this man stands out. Because women are used to their beauty being their power. When they encounter a man who appreciates it but isn't controlled by it, the dynamic shifts. She's no longer in the position of power. You are. Not because you're mean or dismissive, but because you're grounded. Your emotional state doesn't depend on her mood, her attention, or her approval. You're simply present, solid, immovable. And that stability is intoxicating. There comes a moment in every interaction where the power shifts. Most men never recognize it because they're too focused on trying to impress her. But when you've been unpredictable, strategically absent, composed under her tests, layered in your mystery, and immovable in your frame, something changes. She starts adapting to you. She starts texting first. She starts asking what you're doing. She starts making herself available when you are. The curiosity she felt transforms into observation. She watches how you move, how you talk, how you treat others, and that observation transforms into something deeper, desire.
The question in her mind shifts from who is this guy to why doesn't he chase me like everyone else? That question is the beginning of pursuit, because now she's wondering if she's special to you, if she stands out, if she's enough to pull you out of your frame. And the beautiful irony is that the less you try to prove she's special, the more she works to prove she is. Let's talk about scarcity, but not in the way most people understand it. Scarcity isn't about being unavailable out of spite or strategy. It's about genuinely being rare. When something is abundant, it loses value. This is basic economics, but it's also basic psychology. If you're always around, always available, always giving attention, you become common. But when your time, your attention, your presence are genuinely limited because you have a life that demands your focus, you become scarce. And scarcity creates value. But here's the nuance most men miss. It has to come from a real place. If you're sitting at home doing nothing but pretending to be busy, women will sense it. The scarcity has to be a byproduct of purpose. You're not ignoring her to play games. You're focused on building something that matters. And when you do give her your time, she feels the weight of that choice. She knows you chose her over other things that are important to you. Before we go further, let me ask you something. Are you actually applying what you're learning, or are you just consuming content and hoping things will change? Because knowledge without action is just entertainment. If you're serious about becoming the kind of women pursue, hit that subscribe button right now. This channel exists to give you the real psychology behind attraction, not the watered-down advice you see everywhere else. And if this video is making sense to you, leave a comment telling me which card hit hardest. Let's build a community of men who actually understand how this works. The difference between getting a woman interested and keeping her in pursuit is something most men never understand. When a woman finally shows clear interest, when she starts chasing, most men make a fatal error. They relax completely. They think the game is over. They stop being mysterious. They become fully available. They stop challenging her. They think now that she's interested, they can let their guard down. But this kills the attraction, because the traits that made her chase you in the first place weren't just tools to get her attention. They're the foundation of ongoing desire. The moment you become predictable, needy, and fully transparent, you lose the very thing that made you different. This is why so many women lose interest after a few months. The man they were chasing disappears and gets replaced by someone desperate to keep her. Let's address the concept of emotional investment and why it matters long term. When you maintain a balance between presence and distance, even after she's clearly interested, you keep her emotionally engaged. She never fully relaxes into the certainty that she has you completely. This isn't about making her insecure. It's about maintaining the tension that keeps desire alive. Think about it. Every relationship that loses passion does so because it becomes too predictable, too safe, too comfortable. There's no more wondering, no more curiosity, no more pursuit. But the relationships that maintain intensity over years are the ones where both people continue to be slightly unknowable to each other. As a man, this means you never stop building yourself. You never stop having goals that exist outside of the relationship. You never stop being someone she has to keep up with. Here's a truth that might be uncomfortable but necessary. The moment you start seeking her validation more than your own self-respect, you've lost. Men who get walked over, cheated on, or taken for granted all share one trait. They value the relationship more than they value themselves. They'll tolerate disrespect, ignore red flags, and compromise their standards just to keep her around. And women sense this immediately. When you need her more than she needs you, the power dynamic becomes unbalanced. She stops chasing because there's no need.
You've already surrendered, but the man who maintains his standards, who's willing to walk away from disrespect, who values his peace more than her presence, this man keeps her in pursuit, because she knows if she doesn't treat him right, he's gone. Let's talk about outcome independence, because this is where most men fail. Outcome independence means you engage with women without being attached to a specific result. You're not talking to her because you need her to like you. You're not planning dates because you're desperate for approval. You're doing these things because you enjoy the interaction, but you're completely fine if it goes nowhere. This mindset is magnetic because it removes neediness. When you need something from her, your interests, validation, a relationship, she feels it, and it creates pressure. But when you're genuinely outcome independent, when you're just as happy walking away as moving forward, she feels that too, and it makes her want to pursue you because you're not like every other guy trying to lock her down. There's a concept in psychology called intermittent reinforcement, and it's one of the most powerful forces in human behavior. It's the same principle that makes gambling addictive. When rewards come unpredictably, your brain becomes obsessed. This applies directly to attraction. When you're sometimes warm and sometimes distant, sometimes available and sometimes busy, you create that same psychological pattern.
She never knows exactly what she's going to get from you, so her brain stays engaged. But this can't be calculated manipulation. It has to be the natural result of you living a full life. Sometimes you're present because you have time. Sometimes you're absent because you're focused on your goals. When this comes from a genuine place, it's incredibly powerful. Now let's address the difference between being mysterious and being unavailable. Mystery is about depth. It's about having layers, interests, thoughts, and experiences that aren't immediately obvious. Unavailability is just absence. It's being hard to reach, unresponsive, distant, without reason. And women know the difference. If you're mysterious, she'll pursue you because she wants to understand you. If you're just unavailable, she'll lose interest. The key is to be present when you are together, engaged, interesting, showing genuine interest in her. But then, when you're apart, you're genuinely focused on your own life. This creates the perfect balance. She experiences the depth when you're together, which makes her want more, but she also experiences your absence, which makes her chase. Let's go deeper into why women test men and what it really means. Tests aren't signs of disrespect, they're signs of interest. Women only test men they're considering investing in. If she doesn't care about you, she won't bother testing. But when she sees potential, she needs to know if you're solid.
So she'll push, she'll create small conflicts, she'll go silent, she'll mention other guys. And your response determines everything. If you react with anger, jealousy, or neediness, you fail. But if you respond with calm, humor, or simply by continuing to live your life unbothered, you pass. You show that your strength is real. And every test you pass makes her more attracted, more invested, more likely to chase. Here's a powerful realization. Women don't fall in love with perfect men. They fall in love with men who make them feel something. And what makes a woman feel the most isn't your compliments, your gifts, or your constant availability. It's the emotional range you create, the tension between closeness and distance, the mix of strength and selective vulnerability. When you create emotional variety, when every interaction isn't predictable, when she experiences different sides of you, you become addictive. Her emotions around you are never flat. This emotional variety is what creates deep attraction, and it only comes from a man who isn't trying to be perfect all the time. It comes from a man who's real, complex, and unapologetically himself. As we approach the core of this entire concept, understand that everything we've discussed points to one central truth. Women pursue men who don't fold. Not men who are cold, not men who don't care, but men who have a center that cannot be moved, men who have standards and enforce them, men who have goals and pursue them,
Men who have self-respect and protect it. When you become this man, pursuit happens naturally. You're not trying to make her chase you, you're simply living in a way that makes her want to be part of your world. The chase isn't a game you play, it's a natural response to your value. And this is the ultimate freedom. You stop trying to convince women of your worth and you start embodying it. The final piece is understanding that attraction isn't logical, it's psychological. Women don't decide to chase you based on a checklist. It happens beneath conscious thought.
It's triggered by how you make her feel, by the patterns your behavior creates in her mind. This is why surface tactics eventually fail. They're trying to hack a logical system, but attraction isn't logical, it's emotional and psychological. When you understand the psychology, when you understand that women chase uncertainty, depth, strength, and purpose, you stop trying to do the right things and you start being the right person. You stop asking what text to send and you start living a life so full that texting becomes secondary. This shift from doing to being is what separates men who temporarily attract women from men who are perpetually pursued. If you've made it this far, you're in the small percentage of men willing to look at uncomfortable truths.
Most guys will watch this, agree with everything, and then go right back to chasing, texting too much, being too available. Don't be that guy. Take what you've learned and apply it, not as manipulation, but as a framework for becoming better. If you want more content like this, real psychology, no sugarcoating, subscribe and turn on notifications. Drop a comment and let me know what you're going to change after watching this. Remember, the algorithm shows this to more people when you engage, so you're helping other men level up. The man who gets chosen isn't the one running around trying to prove his worth. He's the one who never abandoned his own center. While other men are bending over backwards for female attention, he's building. While they're sending paragraph texts at midnight, he's sleeping because he has work in the morning. While they're getting jealous and insecure, he's unbothered because he knows his value. This isn't arrogance, it's self-awareness, and women feel the difference. They've dealt with arrogant men who talk big but crumble under pressure. But a man with genuine self-awareness, with real confidence that comes from competence and purpose, that's magnetic. You become the exception in a world full of men trying too hard, and exceptions are what people chase. Let's address maintaining this over time. The traits that make women pursue you initially are the same traits you need to maintain indefinitely. This isn't a phase, it's a lifestyle. You don't become mysterious, strong, and purpose-driven just to get a girlfriend, then turn into a needy guy once she's yours. That's the trap most men fall into. But if you're doing this right, it's not exhausting. You're not pretending. You're genuinely living a full life, genuinely pursuing goals, genuinely maintaining standards, and she gets to be part of that world if she adds value to it. That framework keeps attraction alive for years because you never become the man who needs her more than he needs himself. There's a question you need to ask yourself. Are you willing to walk away from women who don't meet your standards? Because if the answer is no, if you're willing to tolerate disrespect and low effort just to keep her around, you'll never be pursued. You'll always be the backup plan. But if you can genuinely say you'd rather be alone than disrespected, that you have boundaries and you'll enforce them even if it means losing her, then you have the foundation. That willingness to walk away is what makes you rare. Most men are so desperate for female validation that they'll accept anything. But you're different. You have standards. You have self-respect. And that energy, that quiet confidence from knowing you don't need any particular woman, that's what makes all women want to be the exception. Here's the paradox. You have to care without needing. You have to be interested without being desperate. You have to pursue without chasing. It sounds contradictory, but it's the balance that creates magnetic attraction. When you care about someone, but you don't need them to validate you, you create the perfect dynamic. She feels your genuine interest, which makes her feel valued, but she also feels your independence, which makes her feel like she could lose you. That combination is powerful. It's the difference between a guy who says, "I like you and I'll do anything to keep you," versus a guy who says, "I like you and I'd enjoy building something with you, but only if we're both adding value." The first guy gets used, the second guy gets chased. The concept of frame control deserves attention because it's misunderstood. Frame control isn't about dominating conversations. It's about maintaining your reality, your perspective, your emotional state, regardless of external pressure. When a woman tries to pull you into her emotional chaos and you remain calm, that's frame control. When she tries to make you jealous and you genuinely don't care because you know your value, that's frame control. When society tells you to chase and you stand still because you understand the game, that's frame control. Men with weak frames get pulled into drama and manipulation. Men with strong frames remain centered, and that centeredness is attractive because it signals strength. As we move toward the conclusion, let's address what happens when you actually become this man.
When you embody these principles not as tactics but as genuine traits, you'll notice women treating you differently. They'll text first, they'll make time for you, they'll ask about your life, they'll get slightly nervous around you. They'll compete for your attention if multiple women are present. And here's what's interesting. You won't feel the need to celebrate it because you'll be so focused on your purpose that female attention becomes secondary. It's nice, it's enjoyable, but it's not the goal. The goal is becoming the best version of yourself. Female pursuit is just a side effect. There will be moments where you're tempted to break, where a woman you really like pulls back and every instinct tells you to chase, where she goes silent and you want to text paragraphs explaining yourself, where she mentions another guy and you want to show jealousy. In those moments, remember everything you've learned. Remember that the moment you break frame, you lose. Remember that scarcity creates value. Remember that her tests are measuring your strength. Remember that women don't chase men who chase them. In those difficult moments, the man who can control his impulses, who can sit with the discomfort of uncertainty, who can maintain his standards even when it hurts, that's the man who wins long term. The final truth is that this isn't about women at all. It's about you. It's about becoming a man of value, purpose, and strength. It's about building a life so compelling that people want to be part of it. It's about having standards and enforcing them. It's about respecting yourself enough to walk away from situations that don't serve you. When you do this, when you genuinely become this person, female attraction is inevitable. Not because you're manipulating anyone, but because you're embodying the traits that humans are naturally drawn to. Confidence, purpose, strength, mystery, independence. These aren't tricks, they're characteristics, and characteristics can't be faked long term. So the question isn't, how do I make women chase me? The question is, how do I become the kind of man worth chasing? And the answer is everything we've covered. Build yourself, maintain your standards, stay on your purpose, control your frame. Don't chase, don't beg, don't orbit. And watch how the dynamic shifts. Watch how women who used to ignore you suddenly notice. Watch how the power balance changes, not because you're playing games, but because you stopped playing and started living. If you've watched this entire video, you're already different from most men. You're willing to look at hard truths. Now the question is, what are you going to do with this information? Are you going to go back to your old patterns, or are you going to start implementing these principles today? Are you going to keep chasing, or are you going to start building yourself into someone worth chasing? The choice is yours.
But understand that every day you spend being the always available guy, the guy who bends over backwards for female attention, is a day you could have spent becoming the man who doesn't have to. So make the decision now. Commit to the process. And if you want to continue this journey, subscribe to this channel because we're going deeper into the psychology of attraction, masculinity, and power. Drop a comment telling me what you're going to change, and share this with a friend who needs to hear it, because knowledge is only powerful when it's applied. You now understand the invisible game. The question is, are you going to play it? The man who is chosen doesn't chase, he builds, he stands firm, he maintains his axis, and he lets women come to him, not out of arrogance, but out of self-respect. That's the man you're becoming. Now go become him.